Hi, this is Anton Roger with APC Data Analytics. We're just going to do a demo today of our pricing software that we use that agents can use for using their local MLS data. So what I'm going to do today is step through an example, and this data set that we're working on is in Charleston, South Carolina. However, we have access to many different MLSs around the country. If your MLS that you're part of is not on our list, please feel free to contact us at pricing.apcdata.net. And this is our intercom button down here below, so you can send a request of a specific MLS that you might be interested in importing the data into our software. So what we're going to do today is we're going to step through a specific example. And again, this example is in Charleston, South Carolina, but any one of these other MLSs is the same sort of system. So agents can enter in their client information here if they have a buyer or seller. They can enter their property type here if they have a specific property. Again, whether it's a seller's property or maybe a property the buyer's interested in, so they can enter a specific property. All their old charts are saved here in their files, so the agents have their own login. But today what we're going to do is we're going to step through and do a new chart, and we're going to do it from kind of A to Z as an agent would price a house. So when an agent wants to get started pricing a house, when they hit new chart, what it's doing is it's bringing them to a search criteria for their MLS. So here we're working off the Charleston Regional MLS. But what we're going to do is we're going to select criteria here on the left that allows the agent to pull the comps. So the agent's role is really to select the best comps and then allow APC to do the analytical work with input from the agents. So what we're going to do today, we're going to select an old property that we have. So you can either select an existing property that you've either set up an account for, or one that you want to set up immediately. But what we do on here is you select the property. So we're going to just choose this one, and it's just called 123 Main Street. So when you set up a property, you're simply entering a property address, square footage, and maybe a picture to make it look nice. But it's not like a AVM where it's pulling data for a specific value from an unknown algorithm. So we're just saying we want to value this property at 123 Main Street. Now here's the search criteria. So the search criteria is here on the left, and every MLS might have a different set of search criteria. Like in South Florida, they might have waterfront yes or no, or 55 and over neighborhood. So everything will be specific to your MLS. So on the category button here on the left, what we're doing is you can select residential or rental in this MLS. So we're just going to do a residential sale. We're not going to do the rental analysis yet. So in the residential sale, we're selecting property type. So let's say this house that we're evaluating here is a single family detached. Well, we'll stick to single family detached if it's not a condo or townhome. So single family detached. Year built, so again, you don't have to use all the search criteria here on the left. So year built, we're just going to step through, and we're not going to use a range here for this specific example. If you have a historic house, maybe you want to go back and go in the historical range, or let's say you have a new construction and you don't want to include older properties. You can use this year built, but for this example, we're going to just skip by it. Subdivision. So subdivision, any subdivisions, as you can see here, are pre-populated within your MLS. So as the agent inputs the subdivision name that they want to use, they can simply type in the name, and when they hit add, it's going to select from a list that's part of their MLS, and they hit add, it's populating which subdivision the search criteria is going to be involved in. And this is obviously similar to your local MLS. An agent can add multiple subdivisions. If there's not a subdivision involved, they can use this other search criteria here to select their comps. Price range, we're going to stay on the lower end of this neighborhood, so I just want to look under $500,000 for this neighborhood and not include the $1 million properties in here. So we're just going to cap it at 500,000. Square footage, now again, agents sometimes are taught to narrow the square footage to the subject property. We're going to show you we are not even going to put in square footage in our search criteria here. Zip code. So zip code would come into play if we don't have a subdivision and we want to do a true kind of map search. You might want to enter the zip code here. Again, you can enter the zip code, hit the add button, and do a search that way, but we're going to skip this because we have a subdivision named. Date range, the program defaults to 1 year. So we're looking at 1 year of comps. However, if the agent wants to select a different time frame, let's just go back and just do the last 6 months. So if I go pick 6 months of comps, I go back to October 8th. So now I've identified my search criteria. And on my search criteria here, what we're saying is we want to be able to select the best comps. And what we're going to do is when we hit search, it's going to populate, it's going to select from that MLS, and we update hourly. So the data is updated on an hourly basis. So, you know, if it's 2 o'clock and you're running a search and something was inputted into MLS as from a pending to a close at 10 o'clock this morning, it should show up in the system. So it's basically on an hourly update basis. I do see one question from a user or from somebody on this chat that's asking, are you updating subdivisions as the new ones are built? As soon as the MLS is inputting it into their system, we're trying to keep up with that list. However, if that list is not if it's not on the list, you can still type in the subdivision here and you can enter it manually by just typing in the subdivision. We just pre-populate whatever's in that local MLS, but you can still type it. As long as it exists in your MLS, we will find it. So when we're looking at, so we have 20 total results, 4 active, 3 pending, and 13 closed. So on here, what we're showing is a geo-coordinated map of all the comps that we've selected. Now as an agent, I'm sure in your MLS you have the map tools as well. So I can enable a polygon and I can select around a certain area. So I can simply say, well, I just want to choose the houses on this side of this main drive in the subdivision. So it's only going to populate which ones you've selected within the map. The map is not a requirement. So if you clear the polygon, no, I'm happy with the 4 active, 3 pending, 13 closed. They're all similar properties, you know, relevant comps in the neighborhood. So once an agent has determined their selected criteria, and we force 7 closed sales. So if you're running the program and you end up with less than 7 here, what you might do is go further back in time or open up some of your other search criteria. Because the key to this program is we're doing a lot of analytical data from research, and if we only have 1 or 2 comps, there's not much data to do the analytics on. So the 4 active, 3 pending, 13 closed, that's an acceptable number of results. And once an agent is ready, they can hit generate chart. So as soon as they hit generate chart, what it's producing for the agent, it's producing an analysis that shows a price versus square footage. So when you look at this, the blue house is the subject property. So this house at 123 Main Street, and I inputted a picture in here just to make it look nice. So this house at 123 Main Street is 1,850 square feet. And the value, you can see the estimated value is 403,318. Now that is a value based off the comps. So what we're doing, blue house is a subject property. The reds are the closed sales. The yellows are the pendings or under contracts. And the greens are the actives. So to make it clear what we're doing in this analysis, let's hide the pendings and the actives for a minute. So, you know, like a lot of sellers, let's focus on the sold comps. So if we focus on the sold comps, and I see another question, you do have to have 7 closed comps on here. So it will not let you run it without 7. So we have 13 on here. So when we have the 13 comps on here, what it's showing to us is that this blue curve here represents the best fit of the sold comps only. So we're going away from talking about an average price per square foot, because an average price per square foot is not the proper way to do the analysis. We know the smaller houses in the same subdivision will sell for a higher price per square foot, and the bigger ones will sell for less price per square foot, for a lower price per square foot. So what we're doing is, this blue house being the subject property, This blue curve here represents the average of the solds in the neighborhood. This first blue band that you can see here, we want agents to call them pricing bands. So this is the first pricing band, and a majority of all the comps will close within that band or just outside of it. And when you look at the closed sales, most of them are within the band. This one's fairly low, a little high and a little high. This one's a little bit lower, but most of them are right inside this band or just outside of it. Almost every comp will be within this outer band. So if you have a house that ends up here, you might want to go look at it because it probably has something extraordinarily beneficial about it. Maybe it's on the water and none of these other ones are. You know, it stands out as an outlier. Or conversely, down here, if you end up with a comp down here, it might be a foreclosure or short sale. And you do have the ability to delete from the chart. So if you do end up with one that's an outlier and you realize why it's an outlier and it's not a legitimate comp, you can simply click on the chart here and you can delete this from the analysis. So if you delete it from the analysis, it's going to remove it from all the calculations in the data. So let's put back for a second, let's put back the pendings. So here's the 3 under contract, 1, 2, 3. All above, but we don't know how much they're negotiating off their price. So we have taken in consideration visually where their price at, as their list price going under contract, but it's not used in the sold data yet. And then here's the actives. So here are the 4 actives, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see 3 of the 4 are fairly high from where the curve is. In fact, if you look at those 3, they're higher than any of the pendings, above the line. So don't think of it relevant depending on the square footage, how far above and how far outside that curve are you. So, and then out of curiosity, you look at this one. Why is this one priced so low, but it's still active? Well, we wanted the agent to have the ability to look at the pictures. So we can go into any one of our listings and I can scroll through the pictures. So here's the data on it. It has the MLS number, but any of the pictures within MLS will show up in here. And when I start scrolling through this house, I realize, well, wait a second. This is from Halloween, so I quickly realized it's been on the market 176 days. Maybe not the best staging. You know, and it looks like to me, you know, probably a tenant-occupied house. In fact, here's a dog in the bedroom. So probably a tenant-occupied house that doesn't show very well, especially when you go and compare it to the other homes. So I can look at some of these other homes and I realize, wow, this house is updated, it's clean, you know, it's been freshly painted, yeah, and this one's vacant, but it's ready to move in. So you can tell relative to the other houses with the pictures, how do you stand? And what we know is from an aspect of, we don't know where these are going to be negotiated to, but more than likely they're all going to close above the line. We're predicting this house value based off of all this information available to you, but these houses are probably overpriced. There's nothing so extraordinarily beneficial about this one compared to the others that it should be justified to be that high in price relative to where the average is. So this blue house at 1,850 square feet, the 403,318 is the mid price point that we're predicting. Well, here's a range of value that we're stating for this specific property. So we're saying at 1,850 square feet, we believe the market value is here. However, we have not rated the house yet positive or negative. We know not every house is average. These houses here are above average, where these houses down here are below average. So what we're giving the agent the ability to do is rate the house. So when the agent first produces the results, it's showing it as an average rating across the board. So 3 stars. We're getting away from having the agent try to go to all 13 of these closed comps and adjust these values for a 2-car garage versus a 1-car garage, a master up versus a master down, you know, a new roof versus an old roof. We're not going that direction. What we want the agents to do is break it down into these 4 adjustments. So think about the site, layout, condition, and quality. So I'll give an example, and all the information here buttons show what we're discussing on these 4 adjustments. But an example is, okay, the site. When we first run it, it's a 3-star site. However, when you're evaluating your subject property, as an agent, when you go up to that house and you realize, oh, well, this house, it's on a cul-de-sac, it has a nice big private wooded lot, it's fenced, I would think a buyer would have a positive response to this property compared to the competition. So let's say it is one of the best lots in the neighborhood, you can simply come rate it that way. So if I say, no, a buyer's gonna have a very positive response to it, I can change it to a 5-star. So if I say that's one of the best lots in the neighborhood, now I've adjusted my visual location of the price, but also it's done the math for me on giving it a higher rating for the site. So now we've adjusted a value here, which is represented in the chart here. So as an agent, I can go rate site, which is obviously the lot. You know, negatives would be it backs up to a main road, there's power lines by it, and maybe it's a small yard, it's you know, positive and negative. Again, look at it from a buyer's perspective. Are they gonna have a positive reaction, negative reaction, or like, oh, well, it's kind of a typical lot? Layout might be, what is everybody looking for today? You know, is that buyer gonna be like, oh, look, this is an open plan with the master down, the bedrooms are spacious enough, it has a porch. You know, what are the positives or potentially the negatives? You know, the master bedroom's too small, it only has 1-car garage versus 2. So think about how that buyer would react when you're showing them the house as far as positive or negative. And again, if you're representing the seller, you have to be objective in your feedback of that property. Condition would be more the roof, HVAC, how well has the house been maintained? So again, 3-star here, you can change the rating. So let's say, you know, they put a new roof, a new HVAC, you can say, but you know, it's above average, but maybe not perfect. You can change the rating here. Quality more refers to the upgrades. Let's say a lot of these properties in here, similar to this one here, have updated the kitchen, put new granite countertops, new stainless appliances. It looks like maybe even new cabinets in here. And yours is kind of, well, it's original condition. You know, they haven't really done many upgrades to it compared to some of this competition. You can rate that as well. So if we go lower on the ratings, then again, it's going to adjust the value every time you change the ratings. But what it's doing is it's keeping you within the range. So think about this chart as consumer demand for real estate in this neighborhood. This is consumer demand. And what we're saying is if you have a superior house for site, average layout, better than average condition, and below average quality, we believe this is your value, and visually this is where you lie. And you can see where these are under contract, it's all within that range. And by default, you know, unless you let your seller rate the house, they'll give themselves 5 stars across the board. But most of the homes have some positive and some negative characteristics. That's why most of them are going to fall within this range here. Some might be a little bit above average, some might be a little bit below average, some might be right at average. So another feature that we've given is seasonality. Now, seasonality is specific to your MLS. You know, Miami seasonality is going to look different than Buffalo, look different than Charleston, look different than Park City, Utah. It's all different. So what we're doing is, on this analysis, again, we've run 13 closed comps. We're looking at these 13 closed comps, and we can choose any one of these. So this one closed March 12th. So this one just closed, you know, a little bit less than a month ago. So what we're saying on a seasonal basis is, how does today's date that we've produced this chart compare to the seasonality of the 13 closed comps? So we're evaluating all these dates of the closed comps compared to the date that it's produced. And what we're doing is, on the Analytics tab, we're giving a positive seasonality adjustment. So we're saying, for April 8th as a list date, we expect you to get above the average market value based off of when these 13 closed comps. And this is part of the reason why we're drifting higher on the price, is because we believe the seasonality is a positive time of year for this Charleston, South Carolina market relative to the closed comps. We also, and again, we also give the agent the ability to, they can simply come in here and they can, on the seasonality basis, they can come down here and they can change it. So let's say this client, you go on a listing appointment today and they say, you know what, this is great, but we want to wait until the kids get out of school. They're probably out of school already, but you get my point. Let's wait till they get out of school. Let's change the date. So let's go to May 23rd. And so if you change this date to May 23rd, what it's going to do is adjusting everything based off this new date. So on the new date on the Analytics tab, what we're doing is we're saying, well, no, that's even a higher positive adjustment on seasonality. So we're giving almost a $7,000 credit for a May 23rd date compared to the 13 closed comps. We are also adjusting for market conditions. So the easiest way to think about market conditions is we had 6 months of comps, so we've closed 13 houses in 6 months. So roughly we're closing 2 a month. We have 4 for sale and 3 under contract. Or 4 for sale, we have 2 months of inventory, and it is calculating and spelling out right here the months of inventory. So we have 2 months of inventory, which by historical standards is considered a strong seller's market. So we are helping the agent by identifying the market specifically. And on the Analytics tab, we're giving a credit to that house of $2,700. So in theory, this house, the same house that closed on March 12th, not only are we giving a credit to the subject property based off of seasonality, we're also giving a credit to the subject property based off of market conditions. So we believe this market specific to this area is moving higher in appreciation over time. So it's not an accurate assessment to analyze the nationwide data and saying, oh, well, median home price is up 4.3%, or even locally. All that matters to that client, whether it's a buyer or seller, is what is happening in my neighborhood. And what we're doing is we're saying, based off of this, we believe it a strong seller's market. This curve is moving up over time because of value appreciation. And you can see what's happening. These 3 under contract, they're all going to close above the line. Well, as soon as these close and the data is imported, this curve is slowly moving higher, which represents a combination of the seasonality adjustment and the market condition adjustment. On the first page, we did the property adjustment for the features of the property for site, layout, condition, and quality. So we're giving a credit of $13,600 for property adjustment. So then this is our estimated market value. So our estimated market value is the same as on the first page here. So this is our estimated market value here. We're just reproducing it right here for you. So this is our market value that we're predicting. But then importantly, we're giving the agent a suggested list price, because a lot of times where the breakdown happens in a sale is the seller and the agent might be in agreement on the market value, but then somehow they come up with their own magical list price. The seller might say, well, I'm going to try $450,000 and see what happens. Well, we're recommending you list in this price range here because we know the average for the neighborhood is right around 98%. So list here to sell here. And if that seller says, well, I'm going to try $450,000, we give you a probability of sale. So on that probability of sale, you can simply come down here and show them. It's like, well, if you try $450,000, more than likely you are not going to sell. You have a very low probability of selling, and it's going to take a long time just to find out you're not going to sell. So we're trying to keep the sellers in a realistic price range for listing. If you go with our suggested list price, you're giving yourself a high probability of selling in a limited number of days. The problem is a lot of sellers believe, and sometimes agents believe, that if they just list at a higher price, it just takes longer to sell. Reality is, if you list at too high of a price, you're never going to sell. So this is and if you have a highly motivated seller that has to sell in 2 to 4 weeks, well, then they might even go to a lower price to give themselves almost guaranteed assurance of selling. So this is just a table to show them, depending on what list price they pick, it's going to have an influence on whether you're going to sell or not at all. So here's our suggested list price. And then we talk about DOMX. So days on market, and this is not an average days on market. So most MLSs and CMAs, they average the days on market together. We are not doing that here. We're saying from the final correct list price, how many days does it take to sell a house in this neighborhood? So these 13 homes that you use in your analysis, on average, it took 17 days to sell that house when they were priced correctly. So the best example to share with you is, let's say a house is listed for 200 days, and the agent and seller make 4 price changes in those 200 days, and then after that 4th price change, it sells in 15 days. All we care about is the 15. So the 15 is a number we're saying, if you were priced correctly, it took 15 days to sell that house. So the 200 days, which a lot of CMAs use, that's bad data. They're using 200 days as an example of a house that did not sell. We want to know at the right price. So your conversation with your seller is, if we listed our suggested list price, let's give ourselves 2 to 3 week window. And if we haven't sold, the market is telling us we're priced too high. Because historically, this data has said 17 days is the average for the 13 closed comps. Now keep in mind, this number will vary on every single MLS data set. It's specific to that data set. So all that it's looking at are these 13. And you will see within the same MLS, some areas might be 60 days, some might be 2. It'll vary depending on which comp you're using. And then finally on the analytics tab, we talk about sales price per square foot. Now we are not averaging price per square foot. What we're saying is this house that's 1,850 square feet, we're saying that house is worth $226.59 a square foot from our analysis. However, if I go back to the chart, I can analyze this house right here. So this house is 1,426 square feet. I know as an agent, the smaller square footage homes will sell for more per square foot than the larger ones. So if I go change this analysis, I can change the square footage right down here. So if I go 1,426, now if I update this, now I'm analyzing this house right here. So it's the same set of data. They're all comps in the neighborhood. But now this house has 1,426 square feet. We're saying with the same ratings, that's worth $273 a square foot. So we are essentially just sliding down this curve and saying, we're reading your price per square foot, but not averaging price per square foot. So the important concept is, at any square foot in this neighborhood, I can predict the average price, but never talk about an average price per square foot for a neighborhood because it's not valid. And I'll show you in a second kind of where that comes into play. So here's our analytics tab. Now when we go over here, here's our map. So map is simply everything geo-coordinated. You can scroll over the houses on here if you want. You can go look at the pictures in MLS. Same sort of things you can delete from this list as well. The list format is your actives, your pendings, and your closed sales. And while we're on the closed sales, I just wanted to show you why we don't talk about average price per square foot. So here's our 13 comps, right? This one closed at 267, 201, 175, 264. The range is huge. So why are we talking about average price per square foot? Because we know some sell at 175, some sell at 264. So what's important is learning that curve value is what matters, and we do the analytics for you. And this is specific to a square footage price per square foot. So again, list format, notes. So on notes here, these are scripts we're providing to agents. So everything I've been talking about is in a script format that's customized to this specific chart. So if I want to talk about seasonality with my client, I can simply look here, and the information is custom to this chart. So it's telling us, how the seasonality adjustment is come up with, what the credit is, and basically why we're valuing the house where we're saying based off our analysis. So we have seasonality, we have market conditions, we talked about days on market. So the subject property should be an average on the market, an average of 17 days on the market at the correct list price prior to a ratified contract. If the number of days of properties for sale extends beyond, the seller may need to lower the price or address common feedback complaints of previous showings. So we are scripting everything for agents based off our analysis and custom to that analysis. And then finally, we have the report format. So the report format, I put a picture of the house in here. You can put a picture of the agent. You can have your logo in here. And then everything is, here's the chart. It's all, here's the analytics tab, and then map, and then finally the list. So it's only maybe 6 or 7 pages, and it's the pertinent information that's relevant to that client. So you can print this out as a PDF, or you can print it out, you can save it as a PDF, but you also have the ability to email the chart. So if you email the chart, it's fully interactive to your buyer, seller, or investor. So if you email it to them, they can scroll over the dots, they can look at the pictures, they can view everything, but they can't change anything. It's a read-only format. They can't change dates, they can't delete comps, they can't change ratings. So it's a fixed format that they're looking at. So you can email this to your client as well. And just as an example, let's say you have an investor. Well, maybe the investor is interested in looking at this house and fixing it up. You can give them a good perspective of, okay, well, let's see here. It's 1,851 square feet. So let's go evaluate that one. So 1851, I'll update the chart. So now we're evaluating this house here. Well, in the current condition, let's say it's like, okay, well, the lot's, maybe it's a little bit below average. Layout, it's okay. Condition is very poor, and let's say the quality is very poor. So then you can get an estimated market value for the house, and then for your investor, like, okay, what are you going to come do to the house? Okay, you're going to do a new roof, new HVAC, you're going to do paint, you're going to clean up the house, you're going to make it one of the best houses in the neighborhood based off condition. So I can change that rating here, but then also quality, where we're going to come redo the kitchen, the bathrooms, we're going to do all that. It's probably going to be one of the best in the neighborhood as well. And maybe the site, part of the problem with the site is not having enough buffer, so we're going to put some landscaping. So you can project what the house is going to be worth once they're finishing it up, but also you can say, well, it's going to take us 3 months to do all this work. So 3 months and we got to close on it. So let's say we're going to be closing by, August 15th. So I can change the analysis and give them an idea of, if you do all that to the house, I think this is what the house will be worth. If you pick it up for 370, basically you have 60,000 in room, in room for profit, including improvements. So it gives a great example of how you can help your investors make decisions. As an agent as well, we have English, Spanish, and French. So if I flip over and I need if I'm bilingual and I want to send it to a Spanish-speaking client, I can simply change it, and everything, list, notes, everything is changed over, and you can email it to your client in that fashion. We also have, in US dollars, pesos, and Canadian dollars as well. If you made a mistake on your search, you can simply go modify the search. So it's as simple as whether you've run a chart in the past or you want to run one and redo it, like, oops, I should have gone back 8 months. I can simply hit modify search, and as soon as I do that, I can go change my date. So if I want to go back another couple months, I can simply go back another couple months, and that would be August 8th. I hit search again. I pull up the new data based off of adding those 2 months, and now I'm up to 22 closed sales. So that's telling me we had 9 closed sales in the 2 months that I went back. And then if I generate the chart off of those 9, the new comps, it's going to be a whole new analysis because we've introduced new data to it. And then just as an example, while we're here, if I go to this one here, and let's say this one was a foreclosure, I'm not saying it is, let's say it was, and I wanted to delete it. If I come and delete it, the second I delete it, it's going to recalculate everything for you. So now it's no longer a part of the data set. So that's kind of a rundown of pricing a house as an agent. I see another question on here. So we cannot run the search if they're not 7 sold. That's correct. So you have to have 7 closed sales. And I understand sometimes you can't find that, but if you only have 1 or 2 comps, you really can't do much data analytics on it. So we're trying to help the agents with the 80 to 90% of the houses that you have enough closed comps. But those 10% outliers, if you only have 1 comp, you really can't do this type of analytical work to it. And again, if you are close, let's say you get 5 or 6, the first thing I do is go back in time. If you did 6 months, go back to 8 months. Go back to 12 months. We have up to 2 years of data. And keep in mind, I know sometimes we're, from an appraisal standpoint, it's like, well, no, don't go back more than 6 months or a year. But keep in mind, we're making adjustments for seasonality and market conditions here. So we're taking that time consideration into play. And again, it's important to have more relevant comps than going and pulling dissimilar comps. So my first answer is, if you don't quite have the 7 closed comps, the first thing you want to do is go back in time. As far as the number of closed comps, I have another question on here. So 7 is our minimum. Ideally, if you can hit 12 or 15, that's kind of the range you want to hit. If you end up with more than maybe 28, you have too many. You know, it's just you can select down, go back down in time frame, or pick more similar properties. But you can see, don't immediately, so, and this is a big part of the concept of the program, is let the data do the work. So I know traditionally your broker probably doesn't say, hey, don't use a 2,500 square foot house when you're evaluating a 1,400 square foot house. But you can see having all of this data allows us to do a better analysis with having more data. If I were only to select a few set of comps, if I just kind of took a window and like, well, my house is right at 1,600 square feet, so I'm just going to look at the most relevant comps, I might slice this out and not realize I just picked 3 above average comps. But when I look at the big picture, I realize these 3 comps are above average. And you know how it traditionally works with agents is like the seller's agent's going to try to argue value off of this comp, and this comp, and the buyer's agent's going to try to argue off of this one, and this one. Well, if you put it all on paper and in a picture, now you can start from an average point and argue about value. Are we above the line or below the line on value? But you can see in this example, we added, you know, I deleted 1 comp from here, but we've added 7 or 8 comps to this list, but it's still giving an accurate assessment of here's consumer demand for the neighborhood. And sometimes this is a great tool if you just want to see how the neighborhood's doing. You know, just you don't even have to price a specific house, just run a set of comps for a neighborhood, and you can see how that neighborhood is performing based off of how many are for sale, how many are under contract, and how many are active. And I guarantee you in your local MLS, you're going to have some neighborhoods that are extreme buyer's market and some neighborhoods that are extreme seller's market all at the same time. So it's a great tool to just play with, and it's so easy once you get used to it. It's so easy to go back and forth. You can just do analysis. And then if you haven't used this program before, you know, I always recommend, you know, running your set of comps on a property that you're familiar with and a subdivision you're familiar with until you get used to running it. And then you can make your searches harder. Let me see here. There are times, I have another question here. There are times when you can't find ourselves. Those charts in here. So yeah, and again, you know, from a standpoint of if you have, let's say you farm a neighborhood. Well, if you farm this neighborhood here, it's like, what a great tool to reach out to them and just run the neighborhood analysis. And yes, it still requires you to put a specific house in, but it kind of gives an example of the neighborhood. And if I do one, so think about it. If I do this one analysis, I can price every single house with this one analysis on this chart. I can go change the ratings, I can change the square footage, and I can change the date, and it'll give me analysis for that specific house. So you can do a general area as well. We don't plot anything with more than 100 closed comps, just from a standpoint of it just gets too busy and too much data, and you're not using narrow enough information. So if you end up with too many comps, you got to start narrowing down your time frame. So I'm just looking through all the questions, and this is a pre-recorded video here. So we can, if you come here, this is our intercom button for those of you who have not used this before. So this is our intercom. So if you come here and if you have questions or you want to know access to videos, simply tell us who you are, give us information. If you have a question or if you want like a shared video, we do have a training YouTube channel. So I go through and I have an overall training video, but we also run through the 8 topics. So the 8 main topics talking about seasonality, market conditions, and days on market. So we do have a breakdown and more specific information on each one. So there's a YouTube channel that you can go to as well and get access. So either our intercom button here, but the pricing.apcdata.net is where you want to go to ask any, you know, to basically be able to sign in and ask any questions. I think I have one more question. Oh, save search. So that's a good point. So let's say we just ran a search and we log out of our computer, and the next day when we come look at it, all your old charts are saved right here. So go to My Charts and this analysis that we just ran. If I click on here, it's saved for me right there. So all the pictures will still be there, the data is still there. And again, if, let's say, you went on this listing appointment 2 weeks ago and you got the listing, and 2 weeks into it, there's 3 more houses that come on the market. And let's say this is your subject property, and the 3 houses that come on the market are here, here, and here, and you've priced up here. You can simply go back. This won't be live when you go back to my charts, but you can simply go back here, rerun it to today's, it'll populate to today's date, rerun it, and you can go right back and have a new chart. So any new data that's produced, so think about it for a second. If this is my subject property and I'm 1,850 square feet and 3 houses come on the market, all in my size range in this market, it's going to be so important to see where am I priced relative to those 3 actives, because it just got a little harder to sell your house if they're truly your competitors and priced well. Conversely, let's say this house, and that house all go under contract, and this one as well. If they go all under contract, now it just became a little easier as a seller because it shows there's activity there, and from a standpoint of there's not much selection for the buyers. Also, remember I said, well, let's say this house, the 3 pendings close. If they all close, it's a new analysis again, because is this curve moving higher? And honestly, you know, for those of you who were in the business in the recession in 2008, I wish I had this tool back then, because all the yellow dots were actually under the curve. They were under the curve, which was telling clients, look, prices are coming down over time, so you better get down on your price to meet the consumer demand, saying they're looking at the value houses. And I think if you look hard enough in your market, you will find some areas in some neighborhoods where there's too much inventory, and the buyers are finding the value homes that are actually under the curve. So it's all specific to every area that you run. So all the safe searches are there. And again, I didn't go through this in detail, but client, so if you want to add a client, you simply just come here. Hey, it's John Doe, the buyer for a house. You can add a client just for presentation purposes. And then also property. I can add a property like I did before. So you would add a property if it's one you're going to evaluate for, you know, you want to do a market evaluation on it. So those are just adding clients and properties on my old charts and then running a new chart here. Now, every agent only has access to their local MLS. So whatever you're licensed in is the access point that you will have, and it will be limited to that MLS or multiple MLSs if you have access to multiple ones. And yes, I see another question. We do have this webinar recorded, and we can email it to the attendees just to make sure, and we can send you the YouTube channel again. To make sure, go here on this intercom button, just go to pricing.apcdata.net, go to this intercom button and request our YouTube channel and video, and we'll make sure to send you an email that you have access to it. I think I answered any of the questions that I see on here. But again, you know, feel free to log on to our website here, and you know, we'll help answer any questions. We have some new tools and products that we're coming out with. I did want to show you that depending on your MLS, we can also do rentals. So on here, this house is in that same neighborhood I mentioned, and just as an example, here's the rental price versus square footage. So this house that's 1,850 square feet in that neighborhood, we think this is the rental value for it based off the same set of data. Here's the comps for the neighborhood. Here's where we think the value is. So this is, again, another great tool for investors, is that you can show them what the rental value is if they purchase it at that price. So we're constantly creating tools, and this tool was actually developed in Charleston by a set of agents because we were frustrated with the access and availability we had to tools to help us price houses. We also have an app on the phone. So we have a phone app that you can actually run this analysis on your phone. So if you're in a house with a buyer and they express great interest in it, you can simply pull this up on your phone. You can run an analysis with it. It's a little easier just from a screen size standpoint to show them this full analysis if you have an iPad or computer with you, but you can also run it on your phone for a quick analysis. And we are constantly taking feedback and updates and improving this software basically every day. And we're focused on helping agents. We're agents ourselves, and we want to integrate tools that help the agents do their business. This is never going to be a public-facing website. This data is proprietary to the broker and to the agent. So the software company is only allowed to produce this output and provide directly back to the agent. So we're trying to empower the agent and give them the data so that when they send this analysis to their clients, we want them to be the market expert and be able to talk about all the dynamics of what's happening in their market and specific to that client. You know, honestly, this client in this neighborhood here that's trying to sell this house, they don't care what's happening anywhere else in the nation from a real estate perspective. All they care about is what do I need to do to get my house sold or to buy a house relative to that set of data. So we're diving down to that individual set of data that really matters to that client. I think I'm about 45 minutes in, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We do this webinar on a regular basis. We also have specific topics sometimes we'll cover. But again, that YouTube channel dives down into specific, whether it's seasonality or market conditions, days of market, we dive down into those details. So feel free to contact us and we'll get you access to that YouTube channel as well. If you don't have access to your MLS, simply, again, go to pricing.apcdata.net, and then you can request an MLS. If we don't have it on our list, we will contact you, and we would need your broker's signature to be able to obtain the data. But we've done this many times over, and we've never had any MLS tell us no once we show them what we're producing for their agents. Thanks for everybody's time today. Be safe out there. Do your best in selling houses these days, and hopefully we'll see you again next time. Thank you.